What is up, folk? Welcome back to another episode here of my Austrian playthrough. We're going to be absolutely killing it, of course, and the first thing that we're going to be doing here today, of course, is yet another Deus Vult against the Ottoman Empire. Hopefully, the easiest one of all at this stage, where we are awfully powerful, and they are not as powerful as they otherwise could be. Getting that nice Crusader modifier, which of course is giving us that papal influence, as well as the morale of armies, etc. So that certainly feels really nice. But as I go ahead and fight this war, of course, trying to take a huge big chunk of clay this time around, rather than feeding any subjects to, of course, add those provinces as soon as possible to the empire. Able to take a fort here in Wallachia, so that's good, giving us an extra war score here over on the Balkan side. But I think I actually called in the PLC, which is certainly going to make this war nice and smooth. But as we go ahead and fight this, guys, I want, and Estonia adding those provinces for Imperial Authority, and yet another prince inside the empire feels good, man. I wanted to go ahead and talk about the Danish PU. Bavaria actually has a personal union right now over Denmark, and when I first saw this personal union that the Bavarians got over Denmark, I was really excited, because of course I wanted to steal them in the same manner that I actually stole Sweden and Norway from Denmark himself. I wanted to actually steal Denmark from Bavaria. However, I did actually have a truce with Bavaria. And the reason that I had a truce with Bavaria is because I demanded unlawful territory. So with that being said, you actually end up having a 10-year truce, which is quite some time. So I was kind of looking for that window of opportunity to go in against him. Now, with that being said, what did end up happening is I passed the disallowing wars inside the empire, as you guys well know. So with that being said, I could have actually stolen Denmark, and that's what has kind of occurred to me in hindsight. However, what has also occurred to me, upon looking back and reflecting, is the fact that I do ultimately end up feeding Denmark to the empire in just a few couple wars. And with that in mind, it is ultimately more beneficial and more efficient just to feed them to the empire. So with that in mind, I've dropped a ball there a little bit. It's just details, but it's funny because it would have cost me Diplo points where it didn't otherwise. Now, if I was able to steal that union at a much earlier date and own that territory much soon after integrating them and add them to the empire, that would be a different story. But as we can see in the game, guys, I'm about to engage the Ottomans, and I'm awfully excited because I do have an outdated navy, but regardless of that fact, I would sacrifice them if I need to, guys. You can see here, after defeating the Ottomans, I'm able to blockade the strait and just stack wipe them there, which is always satisfying, of course, and today is no exception. Going in against another, what was that, about 14k stack wiped, feeling beautiful with that, giving me some of that lovely war score, but also I believe the ticking war score at this stage, which is nice because my subjects, although they do help out in the long run often, they are a little bit of a liability walking around and losing some of those battles. Speaking of losing battles, losing some naval engagements there, which is pretty upsetting. It's just how it goes sometimes. These fleets do need to be upgraded regardless, so I'm not that upset about the fact that I just need to hire some new ones. That was outdated technology there. However, I did manage to swindle my way across the coastline, and with the amount of occupations we have, the battles we have won, this is going to result in a nice big chunk of clay seized from the Ottoman Empire, of course. And I believe I actually took the mission appropriately enough of Drive Back the Turk, which gives us religious tolerance, if I do recall correctly, if we push them out of Bulgaria, I believe, which is exactly what I intend to do after this war. In other news, guys, you can see that my imperial authority just went up to 48, which is pretty overwhelming, pretty nice, if I do say so myself, and so is that military reform event. I also love that event. But regardless, guys, it has to be considered that we're going for the revoke as our next reform. So what does that mean? That means that I'm about to overextend myself quite dramatically. Unfortunately, it is the early stage of the game, and taking all of Wallachia and Bulgaria, which is what I want to do, is really going to push my sort of overextension to the limits at this stage. And with that in mind, that's also going to affect my Diplo rep. Now, speaking of my Diplo rep, I did recently integrate Serbia, and because of that, oh, look at that, just as planned, the episode 2 episodes prior, the Livonian Order adding his territory voluntarily, so definitely worth going in there, balkanizing that Baltic state, if you will, and eliminating his allies so that they depend on the empire. Because, of course, that's giving us a tremendous amount of imperial authority there with all of the Livonian region combined, all added to the empire, and 2 individual princes. So our imperial authority is really high. But you guys will notice, despite it being above 50 here, I can't even pass the revoke. And that is because of what I was just talking about, the fact that we have dramatic amount of overextension, -3 diplo reputation rather, from integrating Serbia, and I'm actually not even getting the majority vote at this stage, unfortunately. So I am going to go into the next phase, which is basically improving relations with subjects. Or not subjects, excuse me, but members of the empire, soon to be subjects, I hope. And I'm going to be starting with Lorraine, actually, because he is heretical. Now, the good news is, guys, that this is a pretty typical state of affairs. A lot of nations are not going to vote for the revoke. However, as we gain imperial authority, that is going to actually help make our members of the empire, the independent princes, feel more enthusiastic about voting for us. So we don't stress at all that we're over 50 imperial authority, because the more the better. But the good news is, guys, that there are hardly any heretics. Now, typically, guys, I'm sure many of you have played as the empire before. It is the heretics, in particular, the powerful heretics, who are actually extremely troublesome, if you will. It is quite troublesome to acquire their vote. I've definitely played games myself where I am dominating, but, Bohemia or empowered Brandenburg are both Protestant, and they don't wish to vote for the reform of revoke, and it's very important that they do vote for it, or else they actually leave the empire and we do not inherit their land directly. Ordinarily, you're going to want to actually ally the influential nations like Bohemia, for example, if they're heretical, in order to, especially if they're a neighboring heretic, they get negative relations, in order to reach that 200 relations sort of mark by grabbing that alliance, the royal marriage, and if they're your ally, you can, give them military access, for example, and that's going to make a big difference. Now, in my case, the only heretic that is of any kind of significant size is actually Lorraine. I do recall actually enforcing religion on Lorraine. However, I think it was simply the fact that his religious unity is so terrible, and he's got that modifier which makes him unable to convert his land, which prompted him, maybe through rebels, I don't know, he may have succumbed to religious rebels, but he has switched his religion, or alternatively, it might be Lorraine's preferable religion, which I'm not aware of. But either way, they're not actually going to vote for us, at least initially, until we boost up those relations. But they're not the only one, as also Württemberg and Ulm are also heretics. And we should be able to acquire their vote much more easily, however, because from my experience, the size of the country is hugely significant. Now, it has been some time since I have taken that land, and we are beginning to core up those provinces, but also, of course, my imperial authority, it's actually going through the roof here, as I'm getting about 0.5 or around that range per month, meaning that within the period of about 2 months, I'm getting 1 imperial authority, meaning I'm getting about 6 imperial authority per year, which is pretty significant, and imperial authority does definitely have an effect. Also, your prestige and your legitimacy, to a lesser effect, both affect nations voting for you, as well as comparative. It does cap out, but forces and so on and things of that nature. So I'm definitely doing what I can here to acquire those revoke votes. But one of the most significant things, of course, is going to be coring up our land. Now, with all of that being said, guys, we are coming here up towards the end of this episode, but you can see that I've progressed through my cores about 60% of the way, and yeah, it's been a really long time in the making, guys. I don't mean to, spoil you guys, but it's pretty clear what's going to happen once I have actually caught up those provinces. Definitely make sure, if you're in this position, to also grab Deploy Reputation from the Pope when you can, as well as a Reputation Advisor. Those things are very significant. But in the meantime, we're still waiting on things that you should be able to grab with quite some consistency, and that includes, of course, the Castilian or Spanish throne. So I'm still waiting, poised and ready, of course, to grab that juicy throne, and I'm going to be looking forward to going straight in against Morocco with that reconquest. Now, of course, there is RNG there, but at this stage of the game, in such an early hour, I suspect that if our dynasty is sort of solidified on the Castilian throne, even if we don't get to PU him now, we will at least in the future, which is very nice. But we're also, of course, don't forget about the PLC, guys. We have a nice big PLC, which I'm systematically supporting my heir every time in order to make sure that a Habsburg comes of age, and eventually in about 100 years, actually, when they change government type, we're going to be able to influence directly, or gain the influence over such a big portion of the world. So you can go ahead and see there that we are able to revoke finally, which means we have the majority, but we're not going to be able to acquire all of the votes. And until next episode, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.